Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2021-22 school year. So I know tomorrow is our first official day back, and I wanted to just put out there for any of you who may have children who might be experiencing some back to school anxiety. For some children, this may be the first time that they're coming back to school in almost a year and a half, or for other children who were present in school. Again, just last year was so different. They may be facing some anxiety, some concerns about what will this year look like, what's it going to be like. And sometimes they just, in general, they've been off and they've been, kind of not having a schedule and a structure, and then all of a sudden they are back to that. And, that can also feel a little bit stressful at times, and create some anxiety for some of the students. So I wanted to just kind of go through with you some thoughts and resources that might be helpful for you during this time. So, we have that kids have stress too. Sometimes I think we know that as adults, we have all different things going on, and stress happens, and we have responsibilities, etc. But the kids definitely feel and experience stress as well. And really, what stress is, just that way that the body reacts to situations that that can be challenging at times for various reasons. In some situations, it can differ for everybody. Somebody might find one situation very stressful, and yet someone else might find that exact same situation to be exciting and wonderful and fun. A good example of this is public speaking. Some people thrive on it. They love getting up in front of an audience and speaking, and other people, it would be the best form of torture ever imaginable. And there's different types of stress. There's good stress, right? Which is where, again, it's, let's say the person who is doing a big presentation and excited about it and wants to do it. And they find, though, that, preparing for it, making sure that they're all ready and they have everything, ready to go to be their best, that's a stress, but it's a motivational type thing. Bad stress, though, is when you can't stop worrying. Whether it's about thinking about something that may or may not happen, or not knowing. Sometimes uncertainty can create a lot of stress for people. And what happens is, stress is part of life. We all have stress, but sometimes it becomes an overwhelming feeling, an overload feeling. Anxiety goes hand in hand with stress. You don't always have anxiety with stress, but you can't have anxiety without stress. In other words, it's a feeling of worry or fear that's experienced as a combination of physical sensations, thoughts, and feelings. So in other words, for many people, anxiety can come about and makes maybe their breathing gets really fast or shallow. They hyperventilate. Sometimes people talk about getting like tingling in their fingers or their toes, right? Some people say they feel dizzy or they feel like sick to their stomach. Some people talk about just feeling very jittery. They can't sit still. There's all different types of things that can happen physically for someone when they're experiencing anxiety. Thoughts are a big part of anxiety. It's usually a very clear indicator is what if thinking. Oh my goodness, what if I get sick in front of everybody? What if I stand up on stage and forget my lines? What if I go to school and I panic and I cry in front of everyone? There's so many different thoughts. And then the feelings, feelings of fear, feelings of, I'm so scared this will happen, or I'm worried that, I'm not going to do well in school, or I'm not going to have any friends, or people are going to make fun of me. All those different things creates anxiety. Some of the signs and symptoms that can come up, and you're going to see as we go through them, they can be really kind of, one thing could mean a couple different types of things. So it's not real clear cut, but, things like becoming unusually moody or irritable, right? I know sometimes, especially with adolescents, that is, something that they just go through with their hormones, right? But if it's something that seems to stand out of the ordinary, sudden changes in school performance. Sometimes we'll see mid-year even something kicks in that creates an anxiety for a student, and you had the student who was maybe doing great and kind of going along and doing their thing, and then all of a sudden, you know, um, their grades plummet. They start failing tests. They start, not handing in assignments, stuff like that. Withdrawing from friends and family. All of a sudden, they don't have any interest in getting together with their friends or going out. Losing interest in activities that they used to enjoy. Something changes for them. They used to love to go bike riding with their friends, or playing a sport or something, and all of a sudden they're not interested. And again, sometimes they just outgrow something. But it's kind of, if you see maybe a combination of things. And I often also say, trust that inner knowledge, right? That instinct too. Sometimes we just know. It's the hair on the back of our neck that we'll say, or that feeling in the pit of our stomach. Something's off. Trust that instinct. Explore it. Unexplained physical ailments like frequent headaches, stomach aches. I don't want to go to school. I got a headache. I have a stomach ache. That type of thing. Sleep problems. Maybe whether it's falling asleep, whether it's that they fall asleep but they can't stay asleep and they wake up a lot, things like that. And then a change in eating. Maybe they go and start eating a lot, or then the flip side of that, for some people, they stop eating. They just tend to, their appetite decreases, but significant changes. So sometimes, again, it could be a combination of things that you notice, maybe several of these things. Or like I said, maybe one thing, but it's just very extreme and out of the blue. Or just your gut. Your gut says, something's not right. And when a child is feeling that anxiety and kind of experiencing that, it can show up in a lot of different ways, and that can be confusing sometimes for us as parents, right? And teachers find it too. Sometimes they can start to become really angry, and they have like these angry episodes, and you're like, what is, where's that coming from, right? It doesn't seem to have like a logical place, but it's because the stress, it's triggering the fight or flight, kind of all those uncomfortable feelings, and they don't know how to express it, and they might not even recognize what it is. And so it's frustration sometimes comes out as anger. As I mentioned before, difficulty sleeping, sometimes defiance. Again, it's not so much that they're purposely trying to just be rude, or you know um, refusing to follow what you're telling them, but it can be, again, they're so overwhelmed by their feelings, by their fears, by what they're experiencing, and they feel so out of control over it, that it comes out as, again, stubbornness or defiance. And a good example might be of the child who refuses to go to school, right? It's not that they're being defiant and oppositional in that they're just saying, well, I don't feel like going to school, so I'm not going. It really might be because they're just so stressed and anxious about it. And it's so overwhelming to them. They don't know what else to do. So it's like, I can't even do it. I physically can't do it. And it comes off as defiance. Chandeliering, it's a big kind of strange word for basically when someone who in general is fairly calm suddenly flies off the handle, like loses their cool for no reason. And sometimes that's because what happens is they, sometimes it's that child who always, wants to be agreeable and follow the rules and do the right thing, right? So they kind of keep pushing their anxiety down, pushing it down, pushing it down. And then all of a sudden, it's like they reach their tipping point. And so it explodes out of them, right? And it's not necessarily, another word for it could be like overreacting as well, like where it's, again, that feeling of like, for what just happened, your reaction is so over the top. And that's usually because it's not necessarily just about what just happened. It's about a buildup. Lack of focus. Oftentimes we see that in the classroom, right? The child who just can't seem to pay attention. It's not so much that they might have an attention problem. It's more that they're so caught up with anxiety, they're lost in their own head. They're having this internal like conversation in their head of, oh my gosh, I'm going to freak out. I'm going to do this. Oh, I can't handle this. And they're having this whole ongoing dialogue in their head with their anxiety that they can't even pay attention to what's happening. Again, the avoidance piece, we spoke about, oftentimes if they're just so scared by something, they just try to avoid it. So whether that's, reading aloud in class, or coming to school at all, or going to a certain class. Sometimes there's a certain class that strikes up the anxiety for them. Negativity, that's really that whole, half full, half empty glass kind of mentality. Some people tend to look at things from, their kind of set point is looking at what could go wrong, looking at what doesn't work for them, what's not going right. And then you have people that just maybe more naturally will look at what is going right, or what is going well and what makes them happy. If someone's got anxiety, they will tend to gravitate more towards the negative, that kind of looking at it from the what's not going right. So that's something they need to kind of become aware of, and help to work through, and kind of flip that switch. And then over planning. Because again, remember, anxiety very much is about feeling out of control. And that makes an anxious person incredibly, nervous, and feeling very, on edge, and anxious. It only, amplifies those feelings. And so for many of them, the way they feel that they can get back that perception of control is by planning. I need to know. I need to know exactly who's taking me there. What time am I getting dropped off? What time am I getting picked up? What will happen while I'm there? That type of thing. The over planning. So when your child is having those anxious moments, it can be very hard, especially if you're not someone who experiences anxiety. It's very hard to understand just how intense and uncomfortable it can be. Sometimes we'll often hear people maybe say things like, "Oh, stop it, you're fine. You're fine. Just calm down. And it's not that the person's being insensitive or trying to, or doesn't care, but it's that if they don't understand that experience, they can't understand that simply telling someone, "Oh, you're fine, just calm down," is never going to work. It really isn't, when someone's in the throes of true anxiety. What does help, though, as simple as it sounds, is helping them with their breathing. Because the more that when we get anxious, we tend to go into, like I said, very shallow breathing. And it's like, and that tends to lead to almost like a hyperventilation, which is only going to create more anxiety. Whereas when you breathe slow and deeply, you're helping to give the oxygen, which presents this calming effect on the body physiologically. And so it really is helpful. And it's a good thing to practice with the children when they're not having an anxiety attack, or they're not in the throes of intense anxiety, because it's easier to learn the skill, so that when they need it when they are feeling so uncomfortable, it's easier for them to access it. It's like building a muscle. So breathing slowly and deeply, and counting maybe slowly as you breathe in. Sometimes people do it to different counts. Some do it to 5. That's in this particular slide, but you could do it to 3. It's like breathe in, hold, breathe out. Just sitting with your child and helping do that with them, counting for them and taking those breaths with them. That is such an immediate, easy way to help bring anxiety down a little bit when it's really flaming up, in the high range. Just sitting with them and offering calm reassurances. Again, not offering them, "Oh, stop, you're fine, it's all good," but more saying, "It's okay. I know you're feeling anxious right now. That's really uncomfortable. But it's going to pass. We'll just sit here together. Let's do our breathing." Do you see the difference? It's validating what they're feeling, But you're calming, your presence is calming, you want to keep your tone calming, helping them with the breathing, um, and reassuring them that it's not going to stay. The feeling is not going to stay forever, but you're not kind of just dismissing it. Also, by asking them to think of safe or a relaxing place or person. Is there a place that if and it helps again if you kind of go through that maybe in advance and kind of know ahead of time. Like, let's say for some children, maybe it's the beach, right? So you can kind of say, imagine we were at the beach. Do you remember being at the beach and the waves? And you try to kind of describe the scene for them using all their senses. That's a great thing, having them use all their senses. There's a really cool kind of strategy that you can do with children where you ask them if they're having anxiety to name 5 things around them that they can see. And then you ask them to name 4 things that they can hear. Then you ask them to name 3 things that they can touch, they can feel. Then you ask them to do 2 things that they can smell. And then finally you ask them to do 1 thing that they can taste. What you're doing by going through so you're taking the 5 senses basically, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what you're doing, you're giving them something to have to think about. It's a distraction. The mind can't, as much as we think it can, the mind can't multitask. And so when you have someone and they're focusing on looking around a room and saying, okay, I need to name 5 things I can see, in that moment, their brain is focused on that, and it's helping to bring down the anxiety because now you've taken them off without realizing it, that thought pattern of the anxiety. And then also helping, and again, ahead of time, have them brainstorm some things. What are things that make them feel calmer too? What are strategies? Because then you'll know and can remind them of it. For some, it might be coloring, doodling, right? Someone else, it might be playing music, listening to a special song, going for a walk. These are strategies that are helpful if, again, you maybe have conversations with your children and find out so that you can help remind them of that and pull that out when they're having a moment. Then we also want to help them to identify what things in particular make them feel anxious. In other words, what are their triggers? That's a really valuable tool to help them start to understand for themselves. Is it that they get maybe sometimes being in a small space with the door closed gets them a little nervous. So the classroom, right, it's too busy and too crowded and the door's closed. Or, there's so many different things, but helping them feel, when do you usually start to feel anxiety? And helping your child to recognize signs when they're starting to feel anxious. Because then the sooner they can recognize that anxiety is coming on and start utilizing their strategies or come to you and say, oh, I'm really starting to feel anxious, it's much easier to help prevent even sometimes the full out anxiety attack. Again, thinking about activities that help them to express themselves. Practicing yoga and meditation. Oh my goodness. Anyone who knows me knows how big a believer I am in this. I use it with my own family, myself, the kids. It's fantastic. And what's wonderful is that there's so many resources online. You can go to YouTube and you can do child meditation, children yoga. There's fun little videos, short videos, so it doesn't have to be something long and intense. A worry box is a wonderful thing I do with children where, you can take anything. You can take a wooden box, you can take a plain box, a shoe box. You can go and build something that's a special kind of, whatever. But it's their box. And one of 2 things you can do with it. For some children, they like to at night, you have little pieces of paper and they can write down any worries that they had that day. And then they put that in the box. And that's their way. It's like showing them, okay, I'm going to put my worries there. And then what you can actually do is at the end of a week, you can go through the box with them. And oftentimes they'll see that so many things they were worried about either didn't happen or were far less than what they were worried about. And that's a really good reminder. It starts helping them to see that, wow, a lot of times, most of the things I worry about, I didn't even need to. Or a self-soothe box. Sometimes this is like a little strategy resource box for some children. Some children keep it even in school with them, where maybe they have like a fidget spinner, a stone, a smooth stone that makes them feel good to kind of just rub or touch. Um, some people have a special pen that's like they'll doodle with it when they're feeling anxious. Something, objects that help them feel good. It's like a strategy box for them. Also, being aware of how much sugar. I know we all hear it, but it is true. It's amazing when you really start looking at labels and how much sugar is in everything, like even things we wouldn't expect. But it really does have a stimulant system effect on our systems, and especially in children. So you really want to be mindful of how much caffeine in sodas and stuff they're getting, and sugar that they're taking in. That really, honestly, sometimes even just simply cutting that down creates a huge dramatic impact on the reduction of anxiety that a child feels. Spending time together, helping them go from the what if thinking to what is. In other words, what if means you're looking ahead and you're projecting, and again, usually from a negative point, what the worst thing is going to be. Whereas what is definitely more of the okay, this is what I'm feeling right now, and oftentimes it just keeps them in the present. And also allowing them to worry. Sometimes what a really cool thing to do is to set aside certain time and say, okay, this is our 15-minute worry time. And that's where the two of you can sit and you can have a whole conversation. What are things that worry you? Maybe you share a little bit too, right? Showing them that it's not just them. Talking about that venting in a sense, right? And then at the end of that, you could set a timer. And then at the end of that, it's that, and you can do that. Like, okay, so we've let go of some of these worries and we're going to now put them away. And we'll come back and have our worry time again in another, I don't know, 2 days or next week or whatever. But it helps them to have moments to know that they can put out there what the worries are, but it also teaches them they don't have to dwell and take them with them wherever they go every day. As we said again, so there's so many different stress relievers, right? Exercise, self-massage, breathing, huge, connecting with their friends, connecting with you, the worry time, all those different things. There's so many different ways that they can start learning. And the more that they start learning these strategies and practicing some of them, right? Even when they're not feeling stressed, again, you practice like mindfulness and meditation, you practice that because then when you are feeling it and in the moment you're feeling the anxiety, it's just so much easier to use the strategy. If you try to learn it and use it in the crisis, it's so much harder. And you really do. You have to teach them. Be a model yourself. Children are like sponges. They absorb
Miss
everything.
Mackay, you can call 801, please. Miss Mackay, thank you.
They take in everything that we do. They see, they watch. And so, if we're trying to tell them about, how to de-stress, how to help keep ourselves in a calmer state, but we're walking around not taking care of ourselves and being continuously stressed out, which message do you think is stronger, right? So it's that whole thing, and it can be a wonderful family project even, simplifying the schedule, especially as they're coming back to school. Um, doing, body stretching little yoga things with them, teaching them about sleep, showing them that if you can get some nice solid sleep each night, that's really important. So things like that. It's really helpful and really valuable for yourself as well as for your child. Also, helping them, acknowledge that yes, they're feeling stressed, they're feeling overwhelmed. Going back to school is always new, right? No matter what. And yes, in these times, it's a little bit even more different because you don't know totally what to expect, or things are different than maybe what they have been used to in the years past. And what you can do is, again, you help talk through that with them. What are their concerns? Help them to make sure that they know who are people in the buildings that they can talk to. Their teachers, that they might have a teacher that they find in secondary school where they have a variety of teachers. They might find a particular teacher in one of their classes that they just connect with, and that's a resource for them. Or, there's school guidance counselors, there's school social workers, and school psychologists. I mean, there's a whole lot of adults in the building. Um, and so, they're all wonderful people, but look, as with anything, some people just have a better connection with each other for whatever reason. So tell them to try to, reach out and meet different adults. And if there's a particular adult that just speaks to them and they feel safe with, don't be afraid to approach them. Or, if you know that your child is definitely has concerns, has fears, has whatever, you can reach out to the teacher, reach out to the guidance counselor, and just kind of say, listen, I wanted to let you know, um, you know, I, my child just, this is, they struggle with this, they're feeling this. Support staff in the buildings are more than happy to then, make it a point that they introduce themselves to the child, or bring them to their offices and kind of, just help them to feel comfortable so that, again, they know that there's a resource there. They know that, so if they're having the hard moment, it's much easier for them to say, I need some help right now. There's also, I know at the middle school level, we have a mindfulness club. And, it's a great space where the kids can come, and it's a club, it's social, but they're also learning the techniques and strategies. How do you deal with stress? And a lot of times as part of the club, they talk about and they share with each other, like, what stressed you out this week? And sometimes what's most helpful with that is they realize by sharing it, someone else goes, oh my gosh, I had that same feeling. And they realize they're not alone. That's huge. That's such a huge thing. Sometimes we get so caught up in our feelings and we think we're the only ones feeling it, and that helps to make them feel almost overwhelming. Sometimes just knowing that others have that experience and have that feeling helps to bring it down and calm it down. So these are just some strategies. And I thought that perhaps putting out this short little video might help to address some of the things that you may be seeing with your children, in your homes and stuff as we begin the school year. So again, I urge you to please feel free to, reach out to teachers, to the support staff in the school buildings if there's, a concern or an issue going on that you're worried about with their anxiety and stress levels. If you need resources, I am so more than happy to help. There's a link on the website where there's resources, but you can also, please never hesitate to reach out to me personally. My office is located at Robert Moses. My phone number is 631-620-7341. My email address is kfinnick, that's KFINNICK, at northbabylonschools.net. And so reach out at any point, and if you want to connect and I can offer any other assistance, I'm more than happy to help. And I'll be, just like last year, going into classrooms and running workshops for parents and for the children, and creating some real resources to help them develop those important skills for life, and especially in these times right now, that will help them thrive in all their other areas as well, with their education, the future in their jobs, their relationships, because they're going to, the more they can come from that space of feeling calm and feeling centered and confident and all those great things, it allows them then to thrive and move forward. So I hope you found this helpful. And again, I look forward to being there for any and all of you. And have a wonderful day. And I'm excited for our first opening days. Bye-bye.